Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Slipping Out. Now, to be totally honest, I wasn't even going to create this video, as at the time I was simply just replaying the original Resident Evil 3 Nemesis for fun, and to try and recall some of the details about it ready for the upcoming remake release. So the reason I had no intention of making this video is because after covering Resident Evil 1 quite some time ago, knowing that the backgrounds are pre-rendered, there really wasn't too much I could think of to include in this video that was any different from what we've already seen in terms of how the game works. However, I did manage to find a couple of interesting things whilst doing the playthrough, so here we are. First of all, I wanted to take a closer look at some of the character models, like for instance Brad Vickers here, after his face has been demolished by Nemesis, and I suppose we should also take a look at our main character Jill. No prizes for noticing that the character models from back in 1999 aren't quite up to the same detailed standard we see in video games 20 years later. Pretty amazing to think how far gaming has come since then. One of the more amusing character models we can take a look at is the lady who we see on the Safspring commercial, as if we take a look at her feet, being these would normally be off camera, the developers didn't give her any shoes, so to speak, and even though most of the character models are the same just with different textures, without shoes we can see just how low poly the models were back then. However, that's not to say the developers were blasé about the character models, because they must have spent some time giving them these amazing details that, because of the mechanics of the game, some of them were probably never even seen at all, or at the very least very difficult to see from the normal camera views. For instance, this female zombie has two different eye colours, and some of the others have slight differences too, like this one has glasses on that are crooked and falling off his face. So whilst the polygon count may have not been the best, the details put into the textures made up for this. Something that the Resident Evil developers over the years have always enjoyed doing is to include a few Easter eggs here and there, and Resident Evil 3 Nemesis was no exception. Here are just a few of the main Easter eggs and interesting details that can be found whilst running around Raccoon City. It'll be interesting to see if we can find any references to these in the remake. Alright, so I think it's time we moved on and took a look at some of the examples of how animations work. So I'm only going to look at a few of the more interesting examples of these, as they pretty much work the same throughout the game, which is that characters simply appear on the frame before they enter the scene, and then, as you'd expect, disappear once the animation is finished, just out of camera shot. Like this, for instance, in the cafe when Carlos appears behind the counter, he literally appears just as the camera moves to this position to show him crouching down, so there really isn't too much to see off camera as such.
We're just mercenaries, hired hands. Do you really think the master would tell his dogs why they have to retrieve the stick he just threw? Think about it!
However, that's not to say this happens every time. For example, when entering the tram carriage, we can find Mikhail and Nikolai just out of shot, waiting for their cue. Another good example of this is when leaving the power plant. Even though normally we wouldn't be able to see Nemesis fire his rocket, he is up there if we take a look. Let's take a quick look at some of the other hidden secrets we can find behind the scenes of the animations.
Nikolai? Nikolai?
Rescuing you is becoming a full-time job.
One of my favourite examples of this has to be when entering our final fight with Nemesis, as if we spin the camera around we can find him waiting in the darkness for the animation to finish. Just knowing he is stood waiting kinda made this animation a little more creepy. Last but not least in this video, we're going to be taking a look at some of the objects and strange secrets that I found just outside of the playable areas. During my time in the RPD, I found this body of a zombie hidden outside of what I guess you could call the walls. I also managed to find this in other places too, including the power plant. Another strange occurrence was just before entering the hospital as Carlos. I noticed this small dot on the screen, and when I started to move Carlos, it also began to move, almost as if it was flying through the sky. That is, until it stopped in the tree. On closer investigation, I found it was actually the key we pick up and use later inside the park, but what it's doing floating way over in the background on this screen, I have no idea. After extinguishing the fire and walking down this alleyway towards the sales office, a zombie can be seen just behind these windows on the left. However, this is not a building we ever enter, so if you did ever wonder what this zombie is doing and why it's here, well, it turns out that it is a legless zombie, placed here probably just to give the player a little sense of immersion. Probably the best and most interesting find throughout my time playing the original Resident Evil 3 was actually all the way back towards the beginning of the game. When we come around this corner near to the police car, we can hear the screams of a woman running away from these zombies in the street, and if we're quick enough we can also see her running away too. If we continue through the next few sections, we find her, well, dead. Now, I couldn't find too much information regarding this woman or who she is. However, if we do go back through these sections, we can find her just outside the left of the area. Which I did find quite strange, considering I couldn't find any other character model hidden like this, either before or after an animation or event. She also has a strikingly similar appearance to the woman who looks over Raccoon City, that many believe to be Regina from Dino Crisis. Now that is strange. So that is it for this episode. I really hope you've enjoyed it. As always, huge thank you to my YouTube membership holders and patrons for your support. You probably all already know what's going to be coming for the next few videos. It will of course be Resident Evil 3 Remake. I can't wait to show you some behind the scenes secrets on that. So I hope to catch you all soon, but until then, as always, take care.